The Puppetmaster. Chapter 1, The Fall of Earth. The world burned. Kai watched the flames lick at the edges of his cracked monitor, reflecting in his dark eyes. New Shanghai was a symphony of sirens, screams, and the metallic thunder of alien bombardment. Once a haven of vibrant neon and bustling crowds, the city now lay scarred and broken beneath the hegemony's relentless assault. He tapped a key, lines of code flickering across the screen. The TDF's desperate pleas for reinforcements were like whispers against the roar of the invaders' advanced technology. Kai knew it was a losing battle. Humanity, for all its resilience and ingenuity, was outmatched. He swiveled in his rickety chair, the faint glow of the city's last remaining power grid illuminating the worn posters on his walls. Once those posters had been symbols of hope, heroes of the digital age, champions of the open web. Now they were relics of a bygone era. A memory surfaced. A younger Kai, eyes wide with wonder as he watched a rocket launch towards the stars. He dreamed of exploring the vastness of space, of humanity's potential to reach beyond its cradle. Now those dreams were ash falling from the poisoned sky. A sharp knock on his door broke the trance. Kai froze, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. He wasn't expecting visitors, not with the city under siege. The knock came again, more insistent this time. Kai rose, his movements cautious as he crossed the cluttered room. He pressed his eye against the peephole, squinting into the darkness beyond. A figure stood silhouetted against the flickering light. A woman, her face obscured by the shadows, but her posture rigid with military discipline. Beside her, two soldiers, their faces grim, their weapons drawn. Kai hesitated. Trust was a luxury he couldn't afford in this broken world. But something in the woman's stance, a flicker of determination in her eyes, sparked a sliver of curiosity. He opened the door, a creaking protest against the intrusion. "Kai Joe?" The woman's voice was firm, unwavering. Kai nodded, his gaze flicking between the three figures. "General Anya Petrova, Terran Defense Force," the woman announced. "We need your help." Kai raised an eyebrow, his curiosity piqued. The TDF? Why would they seek out a hacker in the middle of a war zone? "The world is burning, General," Kai said, gesturing towards the window. "What could I possibly offer you?" Petrova's eyes met his, unflinching. "Hope," she replied. "A chance to fight back." Kai scoffed. "Hope? You're losing, badly. What makes you think a hacker can change that?" A flicker of a smile crossed Petrova's lips. "We've seen what you can do, Mr. Joe. Your skills are extraordinary. You're not just a hacker, you're a digital ghost, a whisper in the wind that can topple empires." Kai's eyes narrowed. He knew his reputation, the whispers of the Puppetmaster that followed him through the dark corners of the net. But he was no hero, just a survivor, scraping by in a world gone mad. "Why me?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Because you're the best," Petrova replied, "and the best is what we need right now." She stepped forward, her eyes boring into his. "We have a mission, a dangerous one. But if it succeeds, it could turn the tide of this war. We need someone with your skills, your daring, your ingenuity." Kai hesitated. He knew the risks. The hegemony's cyber defenses were formidable, their punishments for intrusion swift and brutal. But the alternative was to sit idly by as his world burned. "What's the mission?" he asked, his voice a low growl. Petrova's smile widened. "Welcome to Operation Puppetmaster," she said. She paused, then added, "Are you in?" Kai met her gaze, a spark of defiance igniting in his eyes. "Hell yeah, I'm in," he said. Chapter 2. Operation Puppetmaster. The underground bunker hummed with the low thrum of advanced technology. Kai blinked, his eyes adjusting to the harsh fluorescent lights. He sat strapped to a medical gurney, surrounded by a team of technicians in sterile white coats. General Petrova stood nearby, her expression a mix of concern and anticipation. "Ready, Mr. Joe?" one of the technicians asked, a syringe filled with a glowing blue liquid held aloft. Kai swallowed, his throat dry. "As ready as I'll ever be," he muttered, his voice barely a whisper. The technician nodded and injected the fluid into Kai's arm. The world around him blurred, then sharpened. He felt a tingling sensation spreading through his body, a warmth that seeped into his bones. Hours turned into days as Kai underwent a battery of tests, both physical and mental. He sparred with genetically enhanced soldiers, navigated complex virtual simulations, and endured endless hours of cognitive exercises. Each test pushed him further, stretching the limits of his abilities. In the evenings, General Petrova would visit, sitting by his bedside and sharing stories of her own experiences in the war. She spoke of fallen comrades, of close calls and narrow escapes. Her voice was filled with a quiet determination that resonated with Kai. One night, as Petrova was about to leave, Kai stopped her. "General," he said, his voice raspy from disuse. "Why me? There must be others more qualified for this operation." Petrova turned, a sad smile on her face. "There were," she replied, "but they're gone, killed in action, or worse. You, Mr. Joe, are the last of a dying breed, the best of the best." Kai stared at the ceiling, his mind racing. He'd always considered himself a lone wolf, a survivor. But Petrova's words struck a chord. Maybe, just maybe, he could be more than that. A few days later, the neural implants were ready. The surgery was risky, but Kai didn't hesitate. As the surgeons worked, he drifted in and out of consciousness, snippets of code and fragments of memories dancing in his mind. When he awoke, he felt different. His senses were sharper, his thoughts clearer. He could feel the implants humming beneath his skin, a constant reminder of his newfound connection to the digital world. His first mission was a trial by fire, a hegemony outpost on a desolate moon, its defenses considered impenetrable. But Kai, now augmented and armed with cutting-edge cyber warfare tools, was ready. He slipped into the hegemony's network like a ghost, his presence undetected. He danced through firewalls, bypassed security protocols, and manipulated data with a flick of his wrist. He sowed chaos, rerouting power grids, scrambling communications, and even turning their automated turrets against their own troops. When he emerged from the network, the outpost was in disarray. The hegemony was left reeling, their confidence shaken. Kai's legend was born. He was the Puppetmaster, a digital phantom wreaking havoc on the enemy from the shadows. But the thrill of victory was short-lived. As Kai continued his incursions, he uncovered whispers of a conspiracy, encrypted messages, hidden files, all pointing to a truth far darker than the official narrative. He shared his findings with Petrova, who listened intently, her brow furrowed. "This changes everything," she said, her voice grim. "We need to find out what the hegemony is hiding." Kai nodded, a steely resolve in his eyes. He was no longer just a hacker fighting for survival. He was a puppet master, pulling the strings of a war, and he would not rest until he uncovered the truth. Chapter 3. The Fractured Alliance. The fluorescent lights flickered, casting long, dancing shadows across the sterile walls of the TDF bunker. Kai sat hunched over his console, his fingers flying across the holographic keyboard. Lines of code scrolled across the screen, a digital breadcrumb trail leading him deeper into the hegemony's network. "This doesn't make sense," he muttered, his brow furrowed in concentration. The data he'd uncovered contradicted the official reports. The hegemony's losses weren't as severe as they claimed, their movements more calculated, more deliberate. It was as if they were playing a game and humanity was just a pawn. Suddenly the air crackled with static. A voice, cold and menacing, cut through the silence. "Kai Joe, you have exceeded your authority. Cease your unauthorized access immediately." Kai froze, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew that voice, Colonel Silas, General Petrova's second-in-command. "I'm just doing my job, Colonel," Kai retorted, his voice steady, "following the data where it leads." "The data leads to your termination," Silas snarled. "You've stumbled upon something you shouldn't have. Now you're a liability." Before Kai could respond, the bunker's alarm blared to life. Red lights flashed, klaxons wailed. Armed soldiers poured into the room, their weapons trained on him. Kai cursed under his breath. He'd been set up. He scrambled to his feet, but it was too late. The soldiers surrounded him, their faces hidden behind helmets. "You're coming with us!" "I was, wow!" one of them growled. Just then a figure emerged from the shadows, a woman, her face masked by a hood. She moved with a dancer's grace, her hands flashing as she disarmed the soldiers with lightning speed. "Follow me," she hissed, grabbing Kai's arm and pulling him towards a hidden exit. They sprinted through the maze of corridors, dodging patrols and security cameras. The bunker shook with explosions as the battle raged around them. Finally, they burst into the night air, gasping for breath. Kai turned to his rescuer, his heart still pounding. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. The woman lowered her hood, revealing a face that was both familiar and foreign. "Zara," she said. "We met once, a long time ago." Kai's eyes widened in recognition. Zara, the hegemony defector. He'd hacked into her personal files, learned of her disillusionment with the Empire. But he'd never expected to meet her in person. "Why are you helping me?" he asked, suspicion lacing his voice. Zara smiled, a wry twist of her lips. "Let's just say we have a common enemy," she replied. They found refuge in an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. Zara explained that she'd been monitoring Kai's activities, impressed by his skills and his willingness to challenge authority. "You were right," she said, her voice grim. "Silas is a traitor. He's been working with the hegemony, feeding them intel and sabotaging our efforts." Kai's stomach churned. He'd suspected as much. But hearing it confirmed sent a chill down his spine. "There's more," Zara continued. "I've discovered a hidden agenda within the hegemony. A prophecy. It speaks of a being called the Nexus Child, a hybrid of organic and synthetic life. They believe it can give them ultimate power." Kai listened intently, his mind racing. He'd heard whispers of the Nexus Child before, but dismissed them as myth. But Zara's words, coupled with his own discoveries, painted a disturbing picture. "We need to find this Nexus Child," Kai said, his voice filled with determination. "Before the hegemony does." Chapter 4. The Nexus Gambit. The abandoned research lab on the fringe of hegemony space was a maze of flickering lights and humming machinery. Kai ran his fingers across the dust-covered console, its ancient interface a relic of a bygone era. Zara peered over his shoulder, her eyes scanning the cryptic symbols that danced across the screen. "It's written in a dead language," she murmured, her voice a mix of awe and frustration. "The Protheans, an ancient race that disappeared centuries ago." Kai nodded, his eyes glued to the screen. "Their technology was light years ahead of anything we have today," he said. "If this prophecy is real, it could be the key to ending this war." He tapped a few keys, activating a translation matrix he'd cobbled together from salvaged Prothean tech. The symbols on the screen shifted and rearranged, forming words that both excited and terrified them. The Nexus Child, born of flesh and code, a bridge between worlds. Its awakening shall herald a new age, a convergence of destinies. "This is it," Zara whispered, her eyes wide. "The Nexus Child. It's not just a weapon, it's a beacon of hope." Kai smiled, a rare sight these days. "A beacon we need to find," he said, "before the hegemony does." The prophecy contained clues, coordinates of a hidden planet deep within the uncharted territories of the galaxy. It was a long shot, but it was their only shot. They boarded Zara's ship, a sleek vessel she'd borrowed from the hegemony. Kai plotted a course, carefully avoiding known hegemony patrols. Their journey was fraught with danger. Every hyperspace jump a gamble, every asteroid field a potential ambush. Days turned into weeks as they traversed the vast expanse of space. They slept in shifts, their dreams haunted by visions of the war-torn Earth and the elusive Nexus Child. Their first major obstacle came in the form of a hegemony blockade. Kai's fingers flew across the console, his mind a blur as he rerouted power, disabled sensors, and created a phantom signature that allowed them to slip through unnoticed. Later, they were caught in a gravitational anomaly. Their ship tossed and turned like a toy in a child's hand. Zara fought to maintain control, her knuckles white as she gripped the controls. Kai braced himself against the bulkhead, his heart pounding in his chest. Through it all, their bond deepened. They shared stories, fears, dreams. Kai learned about Zara's past, her disillusionment with the hegemony's ruthless tactics, her longing for a better future. Zara, in turn, discovered Kai's hidden vulnerabilities, his guilt over past mistakes, his yearning for redemption. One night, as they gazed out at the star-strewn sky, Zara turned to Kai. "Do you think we'll make it?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Kai looked into her eyes, a flicker of hope burning in his own. We have to, he said. For Earth. For all those who have suffered because of this war. Zara nodded, a silent understanding passing between them. They were no longer just allies. They were partners, bound together by a shared purpose and a growing trust. As they approached the coordinates of the hidden planet, a sense of anticipation filled the air. They were close, so close. But the hardest part was yet to come. The hegemony would be waiting for them, ready to do whatever it took to claim the Nexus child. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. Chapter 5. The uprising begins. The air was thin and cold, the gravity a heavy weight on Kai's chest as he emerged from the ramshackle shuttle. Zara followed close behind, her eyes scanning the desolate landscape. They stood on the precipice of a dormant volcano, the Nexus child's sanctuary hidden deep within its molten core. "This is it," Zara whispered, her voice barely audible above the howling wind. "The Nexus." Kai nodded, his gaze fixed on the smoldering caldera. He could feel the Nexus child's presence, a faint hum in the back of his mind, a symphony of ones and zeros yearning for connection. "We're too late," Zara said, her voice filled with dread. A squadron of hegemony dropships descended from the clouds, their engines screaming like banshees. They landed on the rim of the volcano, disgorging heavily armed soldiers. "They found us," Kai said, his fingers tightening around his plasma rifle. "Get to the Nexus. I'll hold them off." Zara hesitated, her eyes searching his. "Be careful," she said, then turned and sprinted towards the mouth of the volcano. Kai took a deep breath, his implants humming with anticipation. He dove for cover as blaster fire erupted, the ground trembling beneath his feet. He returned fire, picking off the advancing soldiers one by one. But they were too many, their numbers overwhelming. He was running out of time. He needed a distraction, something to buy Zara enough time to reach the Nexus child. His eyes scanned the battlefield, then lit upon a cluster of hegemony tanks. A risky idea formed in his mind. With a surge of adrenaline, he broke cover and sprinted towards the tanks. Blaster bolts whizzed past his head, scorching the ground at his feet. He dove and rolled, narrowly avoiding a direct hit. He reached the nearest tank and slapped a magnetic pulse grenade onto its hull. The tank shuddered, its systems shutting down with a dying whine. Kai repeated the process with the other tanks, each explosion a symphony of destruction. The hegemony soldiers turned their attention to him, their anger and confusion palpable. But it was too late. Zara had reached the Nexus child. Deep within the volcano's core, she found the Nexus child suspended in a chamber of glowing energy. It was a young being, its form a shimmering blend of organic and cybernetic components. Its eyes, glowing with an otherworldly light, met hers. Zara reached out, her hand trembling. The Nexus child's energy surged towards her, a tidal wave of information and emotion flooding her senses. She gasped, her body convulsing as the connection deepened. Kai, fighting for his life on the rim of the volcano, felt the surge too. He stumbled, his vision blurring. But then he heard Zara's voice in his head, a clear, resonant tone cutting through the chaos. "Connect with me, Kai. Help me amplify this message." Kai closed his eyes, focusing his mind. He reached out with his implants, tapping into the Nexus child's energy. The connection was instantaneous, electrifying. He felt the Nexus child's message, a powerful wave of unity and hope. He channeled it through his implants, amplifying it, broadcasting it across the galaxy. And then the uprising began. Chapter 6, A New Dawn for Humanity. The cheers echoed across the galaxy, a chorus of joy and liberation. On countless worlds, oppressed peoples cast off the shackles of hegemony rule. Statues of the High Executor were toppled, replaced by symbols of hope and unity. The Nexus child's message had ignited a fire that could not be extinguished. But on the hidden planet, the mood was somber. Kai lay on a makeshift cot, his body ravaged by the final battle. Zara knelt beside him, her hand gently stroking his forehead. "We did it, Kai," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "We won!" Kai's eyes flickered open, his gaze meeting hers. A weak smile tugged at his lips. "We did," he rasped. "Together." His body was failing, the strain of the final push too much for his mortal frame. But his mind was still sharp, his connection to the Nexus child still strong. He reached out, his fingers tracing the intricate pattern of scars on Zara's arm. "You were right," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "The Nexus child. It's not a weapon. It's a bridge." Zara nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "A bridge to a better future," she said. "A future you helped create." Kai closed his eyes, his breathing shallow. "Take care of it," he murmured. "Protect it. It's humanity's hope." Zara squeezed his hand, her voice choking with emotion. "I will, Kai, I promise." Kai's grip loosened, his hand falling limp. A single tear rolled down Zara's cheek as she watched the light fade from his eyes. The Puppetmaster was gone. News of Kai's sacrifice spread like wildfire, igniting a wave of grief and admiration across the galaxy. His name was whispered in hushed tones, his exploits recounted in hushed stories. He was hailed as a hero, a martyr, a symbol of defiance against tyranny. But Kai's legacy went beyond his actions. The Nexus child's awakening had sparked a cultural shift, a new understanding of the interconnectedness of all life. The hegemony's rigid hierarchy was replaced by a more egalitarian society, one where all species were valued for their unique contributions. Earth, once a battleground, was now a symbol of resilience and hope. Rebuilding efforts were underway, led by a new generation of leaders inspired by Kai's courage and sacrifice. Zara, now a respected figure in the new galactic order, dedicated her life to fulfilling Kai's final wish. She became the guardian of the Nexus child, guiding its development and ensuring its power was used for the betterment of all sentient beings. Years passed, turning into decades. The Nexus child grew, its influence spreading like a gentle tide across the galaxy. Wars ceased, alliances formed, and a fragile peace settled over the stars. Humanity, once on the brink of extinction, now flourished. They explored new worlds, forged new friendships, and embraced their place in the cosmos. And in the hearts of all who remembered him, Kai Zhou, the Puppetmaster, lived on. His name was synonymous with courage, hope, and the unwavering belief in the power of the human spirit. He was a legend, a beacon of light in the darkness, a reminder that even in the face of overwhelming odds, humanity could rise above and create a new dawn.